This season is drawing near, and that means we have announcements. We have training camp dates. We now know our national broadcast, and the Kraken even renew their partnership with the radio team up here in the great Canadian city of Seattle.
You are Locked On Kraken, your daily podcast on the Seattle Kraken, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what's up? What's going on? I'm your host, Zane Begg, and I'm a Seattle-based journalist covering the Seattle Supersonics, Troy, and the Kraken. And welcome to Locked On Kraken. Today, we're going to talk about the Kraken's renewal with KJR and why radio is still very important, even in the year of our Lord 2026. We have national broadcast dates, and the Kraken only have 6, and I'm going to tell you why that is not a bad thing. And now we also have training camp dates, and that is something we've been waiting on. It felt like the announcement came a lot later this year, but we now have dates on the 17th of September is the first day of training camp. But if you don't want to wait that long, you're in luck. September 11th is when rookie camp shows up or starts, and they'll be here for a day, and then they're going to drive up. I assume they're going to drive. I don't think they're going to fly to Abbotsford, BC, which is it's about an hour and a half, 2 hours from here. And that's where they will play the Prospect Showcase back-to-back games on the 12th and 13th against the Vancouver Canucks prospects. And so we don't have the full rosters yet, but those will be announced later. But what we can infer from last year, so the Kraken did the same thing with the Prospect Showcase with the Canucks, except the games were in Seattle instead of in, not Vancouver, but Abbotsford in British Columbia. And so we can assume, based on the rosters from last year, that basically anybody in the Kraken pipeline who is a prospect, who is not a full-time NHL player, will probably be on this roster. And so this is last year's prospect games, and you see Berkeley Catton and Jagger Firkus and Yanni Newman and Jake O'Brien and Oscar Fisker-Molgaard and David Goyette and Tucker Robertson and Edward Chalet and Ryan Winterton and Julius Miettinen, who Corey Pronman is just like really, really high on. We should have a Julius Miettinen conversation at some point. I don't really see why Pronman has him so high, but he is just like, wow, this guy is amazing. And you can then see if he is amazing, because he'll probably be on this rookie or this prospect showcase roster. Now, the crown jewel this year is going to be Chase Reid, the defenseman who some people had the very best player in the draft, and the Kraken, he fell to them. I don't really understand it. But now you can see what a top prospect looks like. Look at his skating, the way he wins puck battles, just all of the things that go into how good is this hockey player going to be. And I'm so excited about that. I am just really, really stoked to check out the rookie prospect showcase. I don't know if I will. I say rookie prospect. It's just the prospect showcase. I don't know if I'm going to make the trip up to Abbotsford. It's I got some travel coming up in September, so I want to pace myself a little bit. Hopefully it'll be broadcast in some fashion. I covered a preseason game in Abbotsford a couple of years ago. It was the year Kyler Yamamoto was on the Kraken, because there was a group from Spokane, and you just heard Yamamoto, like the Seahawks chant. And I was like, oh, this must be friends and family from Spokane, that they made the drive up. And so I went down and I talked to them, and they were just like, no, we're just we're just a fan of short kings. And, because Kyler Yamamoto is not very tall, and is someone who is also not very tall at 5'4", I respect it. So the Kraken, they'll have the 12th and 13th. They'll play the prospect showcase. And then on the 17th, full on fledged training camp starts. And that should be a really, really interesting one, because The Kraken have signaled, there's been some signaling from Jason Botterill that they want to look more towards playing the younger players, which is exactly what they should be doing. We'll see how committed they are. We'll see how committed Lane Lambert is to that vision and how connected the coach and the GM are with this. But I think there's a really, really interesting battle, especially with the forwards in the bottom six, and who is going to win those spots. Are we going to see Yanni Newman? Do we see Jagger Firkus? Does he make his NHL debut? There's all of this really interesting intrigue that is I'm just so excited to find out, what is this roster going to look like? What is this team? What is their philosophy? Have they adjusted based on the results of last year and the results of the audit? Do they still think they're very close and they're only one or two players away? I don't think they are. I don't think they think that anymore. It would be my guess, but we'll see. Now, on a less, I guess, weighty note, or a less high leverage note, we have Common Threads nights, and these are the artists and designs where they get an artist and they design these beautiful jerseys, and then they sell them off, and every year they just look absolutely beautiful. And so we have Hispanic Heritage Night, and I apologize if you're listening to this. So I'll try to describe, what we're seeing. Hispanic Heritage Night, and you got the anchor, and then the S with these skulls among these roses, and it just it looks so cool. It looks so cool, and that is Andrew Gomez. Now that is on October 22nd. On December 10th, we have Indigenous Peoples Night, and Joe Seymour is the artist here, and we have these really great Native American designs, colorful, and all of these are with the anchor and then also the S logo. And I really like the especially the S and the way the I is stylized, the not the letter I, but the actual, ocular orb of the Kraken. Really, really, really cool. And then we have on January 12th, we have AAN HPI night, which is Asian American and Native Hawaiian / Pacific Islander night. And it's like the S is really, it's like, it's kind of like you've got the koi, and so the S has been kind of deconstructed, and then you've got these fish that are making the outline. It's just like, AI could never, right? Like these are just so creative. And then we have designing on Pride Night Hoa Hong was the artist on AHN HPI night. On Pride Night, we have Teresa Grasecki, I believe is how you pronounce that. And this is like one of my favorite Pride Night designs so far in the Kraken history. I think the anchor is stylized in a really interesting way, and there's a lot of use of negative space in the S logo. It's just again, I apologize if you're listening to this on the podcast, but I'll put the link in the show notes, and you can go and check out on the website, because it's really, really, really cool. And then on February 22nd, Jesse Lipscomb for Black Hockey History Night. And this one, I gotta say, doesn't really resonate with me. It's just, I think having like a person in the logos, like I see what they're trying to do here. It doesn't quite work for me. But that's like thinking outside the box and trying different things and looking at different things, is I mean, cool, right? And so I love that they're trying different designs and different things. Um, on March 11th, we have Women in Hockey Night, Yumi Reid, and here we have these really nice floral designs. I love that they have been given the leeway to really kind of warp the shape of the anchor or the S wherever, and so like this anchor is really stylized. It doesn't have the crisp sharp edges that you might associate with the anchor. It's floral and it's evocative of kind of like a tree or a meadow, and I love that the Kraken allow the artist to do that. And then finally on Green Night on March 30th by Charles Spitzak, we have again, I love the stylization of the anchor logo here by making it look like a lake and a tree in the sun, and then you have the leaves with the among the S. Really cool stuff. And so, it's not going to help them kill any penalties or increase their 5-on-5 goal share, but these are things that are important to the organization. It's important to them to engage in the community, and this is not something that every team does. And I just want to highlight that because also, like, just visually, these are really, really impressive and really pleasing visuals. They really, just every year they knock it out of the park with the artists, and this year is no different. So coming up next, we're going to talk about the national broadcasts schedule, the Kraken only with 6, and why that is not a bad thing. Running a business shouldn't feel like you're trying to connect a bunch of systems that were never designed to work together. One app for accounting, another for inventory, another for sales, and somehow none of them talk to each other. And that's where Odoo comes in. Odoo is an all-in-one business management software that brings every part of your business together in one powerful platform. From sales and accounting to inventory and marketing, everything works in one place. Odoo is one platform to manage, grow, and scale your businesses. The best organizations know that success isn't just about talent. It's about having everyone working towards the same goal. And that's true in sports, just like it is in business. Coming up in this next segment, we're going to talk about the quality of the national broadcast and how ESPN has fallen off. And one of the reasons why I think they've fallen off is because they don't really have the right goals in mind. They don't have everyone pulling in the same direction. And when you have an organization where everyone is pulling in the same direction, then you get this coordinated effort that's across the entire organization that makes it successful. And if you don't have that, then it is very, very difficult to have good results because execution is not organized and it's not consistent. And so great organizations win because operations matter. And that's why you should get Odoo. Odoo is one platform to manage, grow, and scale your business. Try it for free at odoo.com/lockedon. That's odoo.com/LOCKEDON. All right. So the Kraken have only 6 national broadcasts so far that they've announced. And 7. Goodness, I can't even count. All right. Well, we got 7. Please ignore the incorrect heading in the banner. That's 6 ESPN broadcasts. And those are the ones I want to focus on. But we got October 22nd against the Mammoth, December 3rd against the Stars, December 10th against the Capitals, January 19th against the Kings, January 28th against the Wild, February 19th against the Mammoth, and March 11th against the Kings. Everything else is on Kraken Hockey Network. And all of those games, except for the January 28th game, are going to be on either ESPN Plus or ESPN. And these are 2 different platforms. And if you have ESPN, it does not mean you get ESPN Plus and vice versa. But the thing that I really want to talk about is just more broadcasts, more national broadcasts, more ESPN broadcasts specifically is look, ESPN's really fallen off. And every time there's an ESPN game, it's like, oh, great. we got to downgrade. I started watching hockey in the 90s, and ESPN was awesome. Like they pulled me into the game. They taught me about the game. I watched, and I was watching Sports Center, and they just had the best coverage. And you had Gary Thorne and Bill Clement, and there was just this love of hockey. I remember when Mario Lemieux unretired, and then ESPN preempted their programming for the next several nights just because they wanted to show all the Penguins games for Mario Lemieux coming out of retirement. And there was this real passion for it. No, then ESPN, they lost the TV contract, and Versus was this network that got big because they were broadcasting the Tour de France as Outdoor Life Network. And then Lance Armstrong, he won like a bunch of Tours de France in a row. And he was this American hero. And then turns out he was a cheater. But the at the time, Outdoor Life Network that was just broadcasting the Tour de France, they got really big because the Tour de France was a huge story because of Lance Armstrong. And they're like, now we're a proper sports network. And so then they rebranded themselves as Versus, and they got the NHL contract. And then it didn't go great. Well, ESPN got the contract back in 21 when the Kraken and entered the league again. And I remember sitting in my hotel room in Vegas, and there was this video of, I think it was narrated by Justin Bieber, but it was like how the music of the ESPN hockey was coming back, and do, and I was like, I got goosebumps, I'm like, oh man, we are so back. And instead, we didn't get the same cachet that the worldwide leader gave us before the Versus deal in 2004, I want to say. It's a poor knockoff of what ESPN used to be with their hockey coverage. It's this institutional apathy, and it's like it's no longer a celebration. It just feels like it's a contractual obligation that the ESPN, they want that in their portfolio. They want hockey in their portfolio, and so they add that. But there's just no care. There's in the playoffs, the ESPN announcers, they were laughing because they're like, oh, who can't pronounce Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen, who was the Sabres goaltender. And he's been an established player for several years now. Also, Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen is not a particularly hard name to say, but they made it it was just like, look at us. We don't even know how to say this guy's name. And it's like, there's a pronunciation guide that's provided to everyone who covers the NHL. You can just go up and look. He is a established starter. You can just find a broadcast and see how the Sabres broadcast talks about him. But instead, they just turned his name into a stand-up routine. And it's like, that's your content. That's your intermission content. Like, imagine an ESPN broadcast treating like Tua Tagovailoa or Giannis Antetokounmpo's name as like a joke, and they're like, Giannis Antetokounmpo, right? And that's their programming. And there's no care. And so it's just like basic professionalism that is lacking here. And so when they do it in hockey, what this says is that these players aren't famous enough to warrant my effort, and this league isn't serious enough to demand my preparation. And it turns out the league is serious enough, but ESPN, they don't care. And so there's that fundamental lack of care that bleeds into every aspect of the broadcast. Hockey is this atmospheric, visceral, emotional sport. And so it's a living, breathing thing. It's not like football or basketball where there's starts or stops and there's this like back and forth. It goes like hockey is so dynamic. And then ESPN's, the atmosphere inside the arena and hearing the crowd, and ESPN they damp it all down with their audio mixing, right? They depress the ambient rink sound. They don't you can't hear the crowd when they scored, right? The camera direction is like way behind. And then the studio analysis is no better, right? They're not talking about what teams are actually doing. It's just like platitudes, like, oh, let's get pucks in deep and get shots to the net, because they don't care, because it takes effort. It takes homework. It takes, you have to care and pay attention to the product that you are broadcasting. John Forsland, he spends so much time preparing and paying attention around the league, and he takes a ton of notes. And this is just that is the care you want. Instead, ESPN is just like, they're just trying to jam this into this manufactured format of daytime sports talk radio, where it's just like, oh, let's have the hottest take, and there's just vague narratives, and they miss all the nuance that is happening on the ice. And you know what? Hockey is a game of nuance. There's a lot of nuance going on there. And then you're like, well, okay, even like basic operational hygiene, wrong shot counts. Not even showing the shot counts. There was one game with the Kraken, and it was like they had all the names wrong. It was like Jordan Beniers and Maddie McCann, and it's like there's nothing. And then the bench interviews and the coach reaction cams, and this just, all of it just says, we don't care. We don't care about the product. We are just here to fill a placeholder. And the Kraken Hockey Network, if you watch a broadcast there, then you see where that care is. You see the effort to educate and to bring nuance and to inform, what's happening. And this isn't just a national broadcast thing, because if you look at a TNT broadcast, TNT, they're great. They bring in great analysis. They have great announcers like John Forsland and Eddie Olczyk. And even though they have not been doing hockey for very long, they are absolutely obliterating ESPN, partially because they have people who care. They have people who understand that, like, broadcasting hockey is something that hockey fans, we love, and we care about the sport. And when the broadcast team, when the broadcast doesn't have that care back, doesn't show that care back, then it's hard to be engaged. And so I think last year the Kraken had 10 national broadcasts. Now they have 7, 6 of which are on ESPN. There are 2 extra games, so 84 games instead of 82. So we have a lower percentage of that. But a Kraken Hockey Network broadcast is just far superior to an ESPN broadcast. And until ESPN understands that hockey is a sport that people care about and that they should also care about, then it's just never going to get better. And it's a shame, because Steve Levy and John Buccigross, they're around in the 90s, and they showed a lot of love and passion for hockey. And then Steve Levy was one of the ones joking about the mispronunciation of a starting goaltender in the National Hockey League. Like, what are we doing? How do we fall so far? Well, coming up next, we're going to talk about a positive thing in broadcasting, which is that the Kraken renewed their partnership with KJR and iHeartRadio, and I'm going to tell you why that still matters in today's age. Support for today's episode comes from Indeed Sponsored Jobs. When workplace chaos hits and you need the right hire, Indeed Sponsored Jobs helps connect employers with candidates who match specific needs like skills, certifications, and location, so less time gets spent searching and more time gets spent finding the right fit. People are finding quality hires on Indeed right now. In the time I've been talking to you, companies like yours have made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. Usually the biggest difference isn't someone doing more work. It's having somebody who knows exactly what needs to happen and helps everything run smoother. Maybe if the people at ESPN, they use Indeed to find somebody, they post a job saying executive who cares about hockey, then they would be able to find somebody pretty fast, because that's what Indeed does. It lets you Spend less time searching and more time actually interviewing candidates who check all your boxes. Less stress, less time, more results. And we need the right person to cut through the chaos. This is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. Listeners of the show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire. This is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. Thank you for making Locked On Kraken part of your daily listening routine. It really does mean a lot to me. And I'm not just saying that. I'm not just reading off some script. Also not reading off a script because hockey is dynamic and unpredictable is radio, hockey radio. And the Kraken they announced today that they have extended their, it was a multi-year extension. They didn't say how many years it was, but Kraken, iHeartMedia, they have extended their deal with KJR 93.3 as the flagship radio station. And now we're back into an area where the broadcasters do care very much about hockey. Everett Fitzhugh, Al Kiniski, and Mike Benton are fantastic. Like all three of them are they're professional. They take their craft seriously. They work hard. And so you've got this really strong radio team that and then Everett's good enough to fill in for John Forsland when John is doing stuff for Amazon Prime in Canada. And the thing I wanted to talk about here, though, is that the Kraken understand the importance of radio. I know, like the Columbus Blue Jackets, they just announced that they're going to go to a simulcast, which is just like what are we doing here? All right. And I wanted to draw the distinction because television and radio are two very different media. Television is additive while radio is generative. And so what happens is, television, you can see what's happening on the screen and then the announcer adds on top of that. When you're listening to the radio, there is no visual. And so the announcer has to fill in everything. And so that's why television is additive and radio is generative. Well, in television, they're trained to let the picture breathe, let the game breathe a little bit. You might go 2 or 3 seconds having dead air. If you don't have the radio announcer talking about the spatial kind of coordinates, up around the near side board or skating left to right across your dial, that kind of thing, the audio listener, they lose the spatial awareness of the rink, which is really, really important. Well, if you're watching on TV, you don't need to say where the puck is spatially because the TV viewer can see what's happening. Well, then also the radio, as a result, now the radio announcer, they end up talking way more. And so because you have to build the entire environment, the puck location, the passing angles, the time on the clock, the penalty situations. A TV announcer, they have score bugs and they have, supporting graphics. And then, when you can, on TV, you can do a look at that, right? You can say look at how he angled his stick, on that goal, or oh man, what a hit, Whereas if you don't identify who made the hit or who had that shot, I guess on a goal you would say who it was, but it's like look at how he got back on a back check. If you don't say who that player is on the radio, then the listener's lost. And then also the role of the color analyst. On television, they talk over visual replays and they have freeze frames, they have telestrators. On the radio, they have to come up and they have to do immediate, rapid, tactical context. And they have to explain, interactions during stoppages. And it's totally, totally different. And so the people who are like simulcasting, where they treat radio as like a mere audio feed, and instead of it being its own distinct craft, its own distinct art form, when from a sport that moves as quickly as it does for hockey, I think that it just a radio listener is just not going to get that much out of it if you're just playing the TV broadcast. And I've done this. Especially like driving home from games, I'll turn on the broadcast and just listen to it as I'm driving home sometimes. And it's hard to follow. And so the radio listener needs the full geography of the ice translated in real time. And the TV announcer does not need to do that. These are very, very different things. Well, why is radio so important? It provides a way for people to consume Kraken hockey when they don't have a TV in front of them. And there are plenty of people who do this. And, I've recommended the radio broadcast. You can listen to it on the Kraken app if you go to the game. It used to be the delay was like a second or two. Then last year it was like maybe like 5 or 10 seconds, and it was a lot harder to listen to. Hopefully they get that fixed, because I really enjoyed having the radio broadcast synced up to what I was watching on the ice and just getting a little bit more context, because Al Kaniski is like, he's super sharp and he sees things like, really fast. And then Everett is fantastic as well. So the Kraken, they get it. They understand that this is not and it's not a cost cutting measure, right? So the Kraken are willing to spend money. The other teams that are going with simulcast, these are cost cutting measures. And this is then something that I'm going to reiterate, is that the Kraken ownership, they're willing to spend money, and that is not true across all sports. I was just talking to my friend who's a diehard Anaheim Angels fan, and their owner back in March was like, I don't care about winning. Yeah, fans don't care about winning. They only care about the price of beer. And he's like, what do you mean fans don't care about winning? And he's like, he is such a diehard fan, and it's like, it's hard for him to care about the team because the owner doesn't care. And there are all these examples of just cheap ownership torpedoing teams. I'm a big Denver Nuggets fan, and we're going through that right now. Watching a cheap ownership squander a championship window, and it's excruciating. And I will say this again. We're just going to play the hits, and I will say this until things change, which is that the Kraken, for all their problems they've had, the willingness to spend money has never been one of them. And if you have an ownership that is willing to spend money and is willing to put in the resources to be better, that is infinitely better than an ownership that doesn't care that much about winning, and they only care about the bottom line. Even if some of those teams, or a lot of those teams, are currently better than the Kraken, overall, I think you're putting yourself in a way better spot if you back ownership that cares about the game and that is willing to spend. And so, we'll see what happens. The Chase Reid pick was a real big one, and I think this team is on a nice trajectory. I know some people get upset because I'm negative, and I probably can be, for sure. There are some, not everything is great with the Kraken right now, but overall, I'm pretty optimistic, and a lot of the optimism comes from ownership, and ownership understands the importance of broadcasting, understands that this is an entertainment product, understands that they need to serve the fans, and they have that mission in mind, and that comes with the quality of the broadcast, with the availability of the broadcast, and overall, it's just a strong franchise. And I can't wait for this team to be good, because when this team is good, it's just going to be the best thing in sports. So that does it for today's episode. Now on video, we send you to Locked On Sports 24/7 YouTube channel, and on audio, check out Locked On NHL for your second listen. We will be back. You can find us at Davy Jones Locker Room, where we do print coverage of the Seattle Torrent and Seattle Kraken. That's DavyJonesLockerRoom.com. Or you can find us at Davy Jones LR on all social media platforms. For Davy Jones Locker Room, I'm Zane Begg, and I will see you next time.